What is up? Welcome to another episode of the Mitch Davis Show. It is a fun episode today as I'm going to be joined momentarily by Darren Headrick, the voice of the Kentucky Baseball Wildcats. It's an honor. Kentucky is coming into this ranked high inside the top 25. They are, ranked number 18th in most of the polls and number one in the RPI. But I want to welcome Darren on to the Mitch Davis Show. How's everything going? How's the UK baseball season so far?
Well, Mitch, I appreciate you having me, man. It's been a fun season with Kentucky so far, and they've played a challenging schedule. That's why the RPI is where it is, and they're winning ball games, 17 in a row and 18 of the last 19. So people are starting to take notice, and we're seeing that as they're soaring into the top 25 now. And like you just mentioned, I think they're a consensus top 20 team, no matter what publication you look at. So it's been a really fun group to watch, and I'm anxious to see how the rest of the SEC season plays out for this team.
So looking at this Kentucky baseball team, obviously you're around Coach Mingione almost every day, and I got to have him on the podcast earlier about February, around February the 1st, a week before the season. He was excited about this team. Brought in a lot of guys off the transfer portal, a lot of talented guys. Talk about this roster. What makes this Kentucky baseball team so different from years past?
I think it's a number of factors. And the biggest one right now is the maturity of this team and the fact that they want to win and believe they can win. Sort of the mantra of this team is we're not out to prove people wrong. We're out to prove ourselves right. And they've lived up to that. And I think the best part about it, even when you go back to the 17-game winning streak, this team never gets too up. They never get too down, and they don't panic. In fact, against Western Kentucky, they were down 4-0 after 6 innings, had been held to just 2 singles and a couple of walks. It looked like it was just going to be one of those nights where it's not Kentucky's night. And all of a sudden in the 7th inning, a walk leads to a hit, an error adds to the momentum, a sacrifice bunt, another error, and all of a sudden they hit a grand slam and they go from down 4 to up 2, and they ultimately win that game 10-8. So that just kind of shows you within a game itself of what this season has been like. This team is never out of it, and they believe that, and it's carried over. And they almost take offense when teams score on them because they usually punch right back. So that's what excites me the most about this roster is the makeup of the group, how they all want to win. They're pulling the rope in the same direction, and they believe.
I want to ask you about winning in the SEC. Obviously, you've been doing this for a long time, and I've been around SEC baseball for most of my life. What does it take to be a successful, not only SEC baseball team, but once you get to the regionals, this team really seems to have it?
Yeah, the thing that it takes to win in this league, obviously, is pitching and depth. You want to have a defense that's built solidly up the middle. That starts with your catcher, middle infielders to center field, and then you move out from there. And the best teams in this league always have a dominant middle of the field, and they always have great pitching and a lot of depth. And this Kentucky team has a lot of depth with this pitching staff, a weekend rotation that includes a Logan Martin, who transferred here from Division III Sewanee. They've got Darren Williams, who can start, or he can come in out of the bullpen as almost like a piggyback starter. You've got Tyler Bosma and Zach Lee, who can shut down opponents. So the bullpen itself, a lot of times Kentucky can save their best arms throughout the weekend, and that's what helped them sweep Mississippi State a couple of weeks ago, is they still had some great arms available. So, yeah, it's the pitching depth, it's up the middle, and then your offense, Mitch, has got to be deep. Your lineup 1 through 9, you can't have 5 above average hitters and then 4 guys that are hitting 250 or below. You've got to have 1 through 9, and that's what Kentucky has. I mean, look at their number 9 hitter, Grant Smith, a transfer from Incarnate Word. He's hitting over 300. He's homered in back-to-back games. And so this is a lineup that forces you to pitch to their best hitters, and that's where they have success.
Looking at this team, obviously, we see the schedule. They got Missouri coming up, and then they go to Georgia. They've still got to play Louisville. They still got LSU. What is it
Mm-hmm.
going to take for the Big Blue Nation to realize, hey, this Kentucky team is legit? Is it going to take the next 3 weekends to get series wins over these over Missouri, Georgia, and LSU for the Big Blue Nation to kind of rally around this team?
Well, I think we're starting to see it already, despite the fact that our temperatures have been chilly to start the season and we've had to battle through some rain. We've had some solid crowds so far this year, and I think it's just going to get better as the weather warms up. and this team continues to win. I think the great answer to your question, Mitch, is as long as you continue to win, fans are going to come and watch. And I think Kentucky plays an exciting brand of baseball this year. That's going to help get people to the yard. I've heard Kentucky's style of play compared to the 1980s St. Louis Cardinals. They bunt, they run, they hit for power. I mean, they've got some pop in this lineup. So, they do a lot of things. They're very exciting to watch. And like you said, winning draws. It does. You always want to be one of two things, if not both. You want to win and you want to be entertaining. And right now, Kentucky's both.
Looking at this Kentucky program, I talked to Keith Madison before the season, and he talked about, Lexington being a great baseball town. You got Reds fans, you got Cardinals fans, you got some Braves fans sprinkled in there. Talk about how the community, when there is good baseball, rallies around the baseball.
Yeah, there's always been great baseball in the state of Kentucky. I mean, everybody talks about basketball for good reason, but the Bluegrass has been a baseball state, like you just mentioned with the Reds. The Lexington Legends have been locally a popular team. You got even the Louisville Bats down the road. So you've got minor league baseball there. But the community does enjoy baseball. One of the conquering heroes from Lexington is Doug Flynn, him and his father. So, there's a legacy there of some great players coming out of not just Lexington, but the state as a whole. And so I think that's where you get a lot of the fandom from. And like I said, when you start winning, people appreciate winning baseball. They're going to come watch.
A few more questions I have for you, but you were in Hoover last year, just like I was, and that run to the SEC semifinals was probably one of the most magical Kentucky athletic moments that I can remember in my 26 years of living. Just talk about that moment and what did it mean to you as the broadcaster of that team to make that run to the semifinals?
It was incredibly fun to watch. And it was a group of guys that came together. They had been through so much during the regular season. I don't think people realize all the injuries that they overcame throughout the season. They lost at one point their entire starting rotation for several weeks. They got Zach Lee back, but they still were without Cole Stupp. And yeah, I mean, Tyler Bosma was injured through most of the season. So I think the biggest thing was in the SEC tournament, Kentucky got healthy. They figured out some things to overcome those pitching injuries. Tyler Guilfoyle and Sean Harney were having special years. And so Kentucky just maximized their pitching and they got the hits they needed in big moments. Guys were stepping up now that they were healthy. But yeah, it was a fun run in Hoover last year. And for me, I don't know what it was, but we had a couple of nice runs there between women's basketball as a 7 seed winning the SEC tournament in Nashville, and then the Batcats taking it to the semifinals, running into a really good Tennessee team in the semifinals. So yeah, what a run in Hoover, and man, was it fun to watch, especially thinking about the teams they beat. I mean, for years that tournament was the LSU Invitational. It felt like so. It was great to see this team have success, and it carried the momentum, I think, into the offseason and is part of the reason why this club is doing so well this year.
Two more questions I have for you. I want to ask you, what's it going to take for Kentucky baseball to get to host a regional this year?
Well, you try to do the math a lot of times, and I think the rule of thumb is you want to win every series at home. You get 5 SEC series at home. You don't want to do any worse than 2-1 on those weekends, and then you avoid getting swept on the road. So at worst, you're 1-2. That usually gets you to a 500 record in the league. And from that point on, if you can bat 500 in the win-loss column in the SEC with your RPI and the strength of schedule, a lot of times that'll put you in a host position, and you might even get to be in that Friday lineup in the SEC tournament. And when was the last time an SEC team got to take off until Friday in the tournament and not host a regional? So Kentucky, I look at it as they swept state. So they're +1 there. You win the series at Alabama. Now you're +2. And if you can win the series this weekend, you'll be even. And if you win the series at Georgia, then you're +3 going into the back half of the schedule. So you just want to try to win your series at home, protect the home turf, and not get swept on the road. And between that and the RPI for Kentucky with a non-conference schedule, I think that'll put them in a big-time argument to host a regional.
Last question I have for you. It's gonna be kind of a fun question. You got to be around the UK women's glorious run. I mean, that was a phenomenal run last year. I mean, they went all the way, defeated South Carolina in the championship game in the SEC tournament. You were at the SEC tournament baseball, last year. What has been one of your favorite or two of your favorite memories so far in your broadcasting career at the University of Kentucky?
Man, that's hard. I mean, the SEC championship game in the women's tournament with the 3-pointer with 4 seconds left to beat number one South Carolina, that's got to be at the top, right? In terms of baseball, man, there's been a bunch of great memories. The run in the SEC tournament, beating Vanderbilt after Vanderbilt no hit Kentucky in the regular season was fun to eliminate the Commodores. But it's probably that improbable victory over LSU where Tyler Bosma flirted with a no hitter for much of the game. That victory stands out for me in Hoover. That was such a fun game to call, and it was well played. And so, there's been some fun ones throughout my career. I can think of a bunch of other games that were in the regular season for baseball and women's basketball, but those two I just named in the postseason, those have to rank at the top by a pretty substantial margin.
I can remember just one little thing about that women's championship. I was at a wedding. You're trying to keep quiet. I'm watching on my phone. I sit there and I was like, throw up my arms right before the bride walks down, and my fiance now is like hitting me on the leg. She's going, "You're at a wedding. You can't do this." I'm like, "Just beat South Carolina." It was awesome. But it was incredible. But I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully I can have you on later this season. Hopefully we're talking regionals and maybe an SEC tournament championship. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. Let's see how this team does.